Thank you, madam.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, madam.
Okay.
No, this was goes for next time.
No, they're not supposed to. But they will be looking at each section scores. So each section, at least 25 you should.
Yeah, online question.
So have you done the homework that
Yeah.
you? Thank you. Any doubts? No? No doubts?
Only session 6, 1 question.
You have doubts. of course. I'll get to that. Anybody else there? Good evening, Chinmay. Good evening, Pari. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. So now anybody with any doubts? Yes, Pari, Chinmay, any doubts? From our last session and all the homework that we did? No doubts? Anybody did the exercises? You did the exercises? Yeah,
Yes.
tell me. Question 6. Okay. So yours is 79. So can you read the question? Okay, I'll. So this is the best skaters one? Yes. Yeah? Okay, so what was this about? It was the non-pronoun language, subject verb agreement. Okay. So now your passage was, the sentence was, each of the best skaters have probably fallen down a lot while practicing too. So, has. Because there's an each. Whenever you come across each, one, remember that the subject is singular, right? So your verb will become singular, right? Yeah, you had a doubt in which one? Number 3. Since the child of the girls wanted to move, wanted to more than anything, make it big as a businesswoman. So as I indicated, it's very something. Since their childhood, the girls, that is plural. Businesswoman, singular, it should be plural. Women as businesswomen. Okay, anybody with anything else? No? So all the questions you could solve without any problem? Right? No problem? Okay. So we will move forward now. Now this one we were supposed to be doing last time, but we revised a little, so it was here. So now coming to punctuations, very important. Now this particular lesson is extremely important. Why? Well, it's very confusing. And SAT will always put in extra commas for you, put in a semicolon where it should not be. I think you've already come across one of the questions like that, right? So we have to know where to use a comma, where not to use a comma, where to use a semicolon, where not to use a semicolon. And the most confusing thing, and they'll always give you about 2 to 3 questions on dashes and colons. Yeah, so that's what we are going to do today. Okay, now quickly, can you give me your names who all are present? So, yes, now I got confused with your names. Iksha, yeah. Iksha, you were not there last time? I was there last. You were all right. So Pari is here, Chinman is here. So there's Nishtha, right? Yeah. And Simar. And you are Man Vinay. Sorry. Yeah. So Ishan is not there. So now when we're talking about punctuations, what are the different punctuations that you come across? Exclamation, comma, semicolon, anything else?
question marks,
hyphen,
women,
colon,
semicolon.
semicolon. So now, do you use rules for these exclamations or commas or semicolons?
Yes.
We have come across some rules where to use commas and where to use semicolons. Now we'll do a little more. Yeah. Now, when we talk about end sentence punctuations, what do you mean by end sentence punctuations? Full stop, question mark, exclamation mark. Yeah. So sometimes now when we come to say a full stop, when do you use a full stop? When it's a statement. Yeah, a statement is made, or maybe something is said to you, then also full stop can be used. Now, when we talk about that's why we call them declarative sentences. Like, I need to take out the trash. That is, you are saying something. That's a declarative sentence. Now, when it comes to question marks, now, if it is a proper question, we know question marks should come in. Like, how did you forget to take out the trash? Now, the same thing if I say, like, it also depends upon the tone. You forgot to take out the trash. So will it be question mark or exclamation? Exclamation, right? Did you forget to take out the trash? Question mark. So you have to know exactly whether there should be a question mark or exclamation. Now, exclamation usually comes with emotions. So when there's an emotion attached to it, so like if I say, I can't believe you forgot to take out the trash after I asked you to do so 5 times. So what does that mean? There's a tone to it, there's an emotion, you are exclaiming something. So you will get an exclamation mark. Now, if we come down a little further, like we compare these two, take out the trash, both wordings are the same. It will depend upon the tone. Now, when we're talking about a conversation, then depending upon the tone, there'll be a full stop or exclamation, right? But when you're coming to written language, yeah, when you look at the context, you can come to know the tone, but otherwise it becomes a little difficult sometimes. Now, suppose we have this sentence. Andres wondered if he should save his money for a rainy day or go to an amusement park instead. So in this case, should you have a question mark or a full stop? Full stop. Because is it asking a question? No. So how do you differentiate between a question and a statement? You ask yourself, is it asking you a question or not? Right? As simple as that, but sometimes we do get confused with the wordings. Like, I asked my mom if I could have some milk. Though the sentence talks about asking, is it asking a question? No, it is just making a statement, right? Okay, so these were the simple, the external sentence and the end sentence punctuations are not very confusing. But when it comes to internal sentence punctuations, that is when it comes to dashes, colons, semicolons, and commas, there's where SAT tries to confuse you and gives you questions which are all jumbled up and with wrong punctuations. Now, when we talk about of course, there will always be your passage, so the context will be very important. Yeah. Now, first thing is the dashes. So when do we use dashes? Any idea? When
For additional information, we use
additional information Elaborating something,
Someone has said a
quoted line. So that will come at the end of the sentence. Yes, attendance हो गया सबको? So when you have something that is stated, when you talk about, we have two ways of using dashes. We can use a double dash or a single dash. Now, when a double dash is used, when there is a non-essential statement in the middle of a sentence. And this is where SAP poses you questions. They will give 1 dash 1 comma, or 1 dash 1 semicolon, 1 dash 1 bracket. So you have to figure out which option will be correct depending upon what is given to you. So if it begins with a dash, it will end with a dash. Now, when you have some non-essential information, there is additional information in the middle of a sentence, you can separate it with the help of 2 dashes, right? Or 2 commas, right? And in extreme cases, when there is an information which is not really important to the, not at all important to the sentence, but they want to provide it. In that case, they will use parentheses, right? So these are the 3 ways that you can separate non-essential information in the middle of the sentence. Now, how do you figure out that the information is non-essential? If you remove that part from the sentence, the rest of the sentence is still a complete sentence, right? So now the rule is that if you have 1 dash in the beginning, then the second one should also be a dash. If you have a comma, now your questions will come something like this: 1 comma 1 dash. Yeah. Then you will go to the options and see. In the options, maybe your first option is the same, 1 comma 1 dash. Second option maybe is 2 commas. Third is 2 dashes. And the fourth will be giving you, say, first.
Ma'am, the board is not visible.
Second comma. Yeah.
Ma'am, the board is not visible.
Board is not visible. Okay. But the camera is there. I think they have to switch the camera.
Yes, ma'am. You have to switch the video.
Just a moment. What is that for? No.
Yeah, I would want
Or this one?
to.
Screen sharing.
बोर्ड वाला ही है
Screen sharing और board दोनों नहीं आएंगे.
उसका संकेत को
दोनों आते हैं ना इसमें.
दोनों आना चाहिए ये आना चाहिए
इसमें share screen और उसके sharing.
अभी आ रहे हैं
नहीं पर मेरा share screen नहीं आ रहा है, सिर्फ बोर्ड है.
अभी शेयर करेंगे तो बोर्ड ही दिखेगा
Okay, we'll continue. Now suppose you have these options given to you. Can you see the board now? Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Okay, so you have 4 options, comma, dash, both commas, both dashes, dash, comma. Yeah. So which ones would be correct options?
Ma'am,
So-
second and third.
Second and third, both of them. So usually, of course, they will give you only one of them which would be correct. Maybe they give you a semicolon away now. Yeah. So either both dashes will be correct, or if your option doesn't have 2 dashes, 2 commas will be correct. Right? So just wait for them to come back. Anyway. So this is where we come. So you can follow from the book by the time they can manage that. So now when you have, now this is one rule that either it will any additional information or so any additional information or which we call non-essential clause in the middle of the sentence, 2 dashes or 2 commas, but not 1 dash and 1. Right? Now when we come to a single dash, when do we use a single dash? So single dash is usually used at the end of the sentence. Right? Now when we use a single dash at the end of the sentence, there's some rule. So first of all, what should come after that dash? Either an explanation, say additional explanation, something which is emphasized, right? Now, the main rule is that the part before the dash should be an independent clause. Right? So the any part, so there'll be a usually there won't be a comma before the dash first of all. Yeah, that would be wrong. Before the dash, whatever part of the sentence comes up, that is an independent clause. So whenever you come across a single dash, you see what is after, what is the information given to you. Yeah. And the part before that dash stands as a complete sentence or not. If it is not a complete sentence, that is, it is not an independent clause, then you will not use a dash. You may use a comma. Right? Instead of a dash, you will come up with a comma. So this is, and similarly, yes, can you hear me, all of you?
Ma'am, I had a doubt.
Yeah.
Ma'am, if there are 2 dashes, so will it be an independent or dependent clause?
No, if you have 2 dashes, as we said, 2 dashes means some extra information in the middle. Yeah. So that extra info may be a phrase, a few words, a phrase, or a dependent clause. It need not be an independent clause. But one thing you have to see, if you remove this extra information from the middle of the sentence, the rest of the sentence that you have should make a complete sentence in itself. Right? Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
So now when we talk about, say we were talking about a single dash at the end of the sentence, the part before this, that dash should be independent clause. So instead of a dash, the same applies to a colon. So the part before the colon should be an independent clause. The part after the colon need not be independent clause. Similarly, the part after the dash need not be an independent clause. It could be a phrase, it could be some words, it could be a list, yeah, an explanation, but the rule is the part before that is important. So that is the thing that you have to check. Whenever you see 1 dash, first thing you have to see, you read the entire sentence and see Only one dash is required or there's a comma before it. Or if there's no comma before it, read the sentence, something extra comes up after the dash. So you know that you have to check the part before the dash, right? So if the part before the dash is not an independent clause, then the dash is grammatically incorrect. Yeah, this much is clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Hold on. Okay, so I suppose I can't use both the cameras together. Anyway, you can follow from the text. So now the single dash, single colon rule is clear. Yeah. The two dashes also I explained. Now let's look at some examples here. Say we have this one. The first one, London, which is a very old city, has many new buildings. Yeah. So if you see, we have two dashes. London dash, which is a very old city. Now that means there is an additional information given in the middle of the sentence. Yeah. So there's a dash and a dash. Now if you remove the part in the middle of the sentence, what do we have? London is a very old, has many new buildings. Yeah. And the additional information is it is a very old city. So you have to figure out from the sentence, is it an additional information? Should we have two dashes? Yeah. Now, it could also be written in a different way. London is a very old city and has many new buildings. So if the sentence completely changes, so maybe it is you don't have the option of only punctuations, but you are given the option of sentences itself, different version of the sentence. So that will also be correct. Now, if you look at this one, London has many tourist attractions, museums, palaces, and monuments. Right? So here you have one single dash. What is the dash doing? It is setting up a list. Yeah. So London has many tourist attractions, and it is talking about the tourist attractions. So that is also correct. Now, if you look at the next one, you were right, dash, he did eat the whole thing. What is the dash doing over here?
Getting about one US type.
Yeah, it's giving you some additional information or emphasizing something. So you are right. He did eat the whole thing. So we can finish off with you are right, but why you are right? That is the information that is being used. Now, if you look at, say this one, there's only one thing we can do now.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
ma'am, instead of dash, can we use comma also?
We can use comma, which for which one?
Like for the learning to ride a unicycle is easy one.
Pardon?
For the one which is saying that learning to ride a unicycle is easy, dash
Okay.
if you don't.
We'll come to that. Wait a minute. I haven't come. Right? So now,
Yes.
if I talk about the first one, London, which is a very old city, here we can use commas instead of dashes. So, but both of them should be the same, either 2 dashes or 2 commas. Okay, now if you, okay, now coming to this one. Learning to ride a unicycle is easy. Dash, if you don't mind a few bumps and bruises. Now, first tell me, will you use a comma instead of a dash over here? Yes, man. Read the sentence with a comma.
Learning to ride a unicycle is easy if you don't mind a few bumps and bruises.
So the first part is an independent clause.
Yes.
Second part is an additional information. You can say, it could you could say that this is something added to it. Yes, you can use a comma because the second part anyway is not an independent clause, right? If you don't mind a few bumps and bruises, would that be written as an independent sentence? Anyone? No, right? If it is not written as an independent sentence or it is not an independent clause, you can use a comma, right? Because it is giving you additional information and we can say that this would come in as a modifier. Okay, so you have to see if it comes in as a modifier, then you can use a comma instead of a dash. Okay, now, but in these cases, would you use a colon anyway? What about this one? London has many tourist attractions. There you can use a colon. Yeah, but in this one, there is only one thing we can do. Run, you will not use a colon. Or even in the others, here it is giving you additional information, but it is stressing on something. So when a part of a sentence is emphasizing something, you will be using a dash, not a colon. Now, like this one, camping is my family's favorite pastime, but not mine. Now here you are emphasizing something, so you are using a dash. Otherwise, you can also use a comma instead, right? Okay, now coming to the colons. Now colon is, again, the purpose could be to set up a list or an explanation, right? Now here also, colons are like short phrases, quotations, somebody has said something, or like a definition. In that case, colons will be used. And again, for using a colon, the portion of the sentence before the colon should be independent clause, right? Yes, Pari, are you following?
Yes, ma'am.
So now it can also be that both the clauses, that is the first and the second, like both the portions before and after the colon are independent clauses, right? That is also correct. Here again, the second part of the sentence would be an independent clause and it would provide an explanation to the first part. But the explanation or definition, that should be the purpose of using a colon, right? But how to check whether to use a colon or not? First part should be independent. Whether the second part is independent or not does not matter. But the first part of the sentence, always independent in case of colons and dashes. Let's look at some examples over here. So the first one, we will need the following for a camping trip: a tent, sleeping bags, and hiking boots. What is it doing? It's setting up a list of things. Now, if you look at the second one, the platypus is a strange animal. It lays eggs and has a bill, but is still considered a mammal. Right? What is it doing? Giving an explanation. So the platypus is a strange animal. Why it is a strange animal? Colon can be used. Say we now look at, so okay, we attempted a sneak attack with the worst results yet. We'd been forced to make a hasty retreat. So what is it giving you? The result, right? So colon, instead of writing and we were forced to, like this comes very handy using dashes and colons when you are writing your essays for your application and you have a word limit, 150 word limit, and you have to express yourself. So you can use dashes and colons, right? So this is very useful in that. Okay, now when we're talking about somebody said something, yeah, Lincoln's Gettysburg address began with the following PM. So the word following comes in, means you are talking about something specific. So there we can use a colon, right? In this case, we can also use a dash. In this one about the sneak attack, here also we can use a dash. So in for the second, say even this one, there was only one thing to do: fight the pirates head off. So all these we can use dashes or colons, right? But the first one, here also we can use a dash or a colon. So wherever you have a colon, it can be replaced with a dash, but all dashes cannot be replaced with colons always. So here colons and dashes are having the same purpose, right? Now that was dashes and colons. The only thing that you have to be careful about is what? What are the two things that you have to look at before the sentence? Yeah, and what is coming up after the sentence should be an explanation or a list or something that is being emphasized, right? And when you have two dashes, the part between the dashes should be an extra information, right? Now coming to the semicolon. Now we had come across semicolons earlier also when we were talking about sentence structure. Right? So what was the rule of using semicolons? Anyone remembers? Chinmay, do you remember? Chinmay, are you there? Can we have your video on? Yes, Chinmay. What was the rule to use semicolons? Do you remember? We can't hear you, Chinmay.
Ma'am.
Yeah. Yes, when we had talked about semicolons when we were doing sentence structures, right? So what was the rule to use a semicolon?
Am I audible right now?
Yes, you are audible. You can speak.
Ma'am, semicolon can be used to connect to main clauses instead of full stop.
Yeah, so the two parts of the sentence before and after the semicolon should be
Main clauses.
independent clauses.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? So they
Yes.
can be written as sentences by themselves. But one more thing you have to keep in mind. What is that? The idea should be connected. Right? Independent clauses, idea should be connected. Then in that case, you can use semicolons. So yeah, in a list, within a list, you can. No, not within a list, like separating list, that also will come to. Okay. Now separating two clauses that we know, and it can replace a comma conjunction, right? Or when you're combining sentences, simplest way to do is to use a semicolon. But if you don't have that option, then you have to look for combining sentences and rearranging or restructuring, right? Okay, now let's look at these. Like London is an old city. It has many new buildings. Semicolon, both the clauses are independent. Like Alex cooks his brownies with lard. They taste great. So there also, Alex cooks his brownies with lard with an independent clause. They taste great, also independent clause. We can use a semicolon. Now let's look at this list. On our trip, we visited Washington, DC, semicolon, Chicago, comma, Illinois, semicolon, and New York, comma, New York. Why are you using semicolons? Any idea?
Because here comma is used to signify the place where the subcategories are.
Right. So in a list, now we first identify the items in the list. If even one of the items in the list, say we have 4 to 5 items, even one of them has a comma in the middle. The items in the list will be separated with the help of semicolons. So in this case, it is Washington, comma, DC, that is Washington in DC, Chicago in Illinois, New York, comma, New York. So it is a town and the city and the district. So our list is actually a city and a district put together. So we will be using semicolon to separate them. Now let's look at the second one. So I packed my sleeping bag, a pop-up tent, comma, which I had borrowed from a friend and only used a few times, a cast iron skillet, and some popcorn to bring on the camping trip. So now in this case, what are the items in the list? Item number 1, sleeping bag. Number 2, a pop-up tent. Only pop-up tent? Yeah, so the whole thing. A pop-up tent, comma, which I borrowed from a friend and only used a few times. That entire thing is one single item. Now you see there's a comma in the middle. Right? Now we come to the next item. What is it? A cast iron skillet. And the last item, and some popcorn to bring on the camping trip. Now, to bring on the camping trip will be, apart from the, so that's a part of the sentence. I packed these to bring on my camping trip. Right? So now, how many items did we come across? 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, of the 4 items, there's just one item which is a comma in the middle. So we cannot separate the rest of the items with the help of commas. We have to separate them with the help of semicolons. So when you have a long sentence like this, it is very important to be able to identify the items. Yeah. So read carefully, see which are the items which can be separated.
But that is an extra information, which
Which
I
one?
had borrowed from a friend.
Yeah, that is an extra information, but then when you're talking about a list, that is a part of that particular item. Right? So if you see, there are a whole lot of things that you are carrying. So now this, though it is an extra information, it is part of that item. Right? So so that's why there's a comma here. Now you don't need a comma after that because that is a part of one item. So semicolon comes. Right? So we come back to the rules before after test for semicolons, which we already said a little while ago. Both parts should be independent clauses. And when you're talking about a list, any item in the list has a comma, you will be separating with semicolon. Yeah, these are the two purposes of semicolons. So you can mark this as important. Check the part before semicolon, check the part after semicolon. If both of them are independent, semicolon is correct. If say the first part is not an independent clause, then
Run-on sentence, so we can use the semicolon. It is a run-on sentence, so we can
say we
use
have the first part of the sentence as the dependent clause. So, and the second part of the sentence as independent clause.
Ma'am, we will put a comma between them.
You will put a comma between them, right? Remember, we had talked about this when we were doing sentence structures long time ago, forgotten, right? So you have two independent clauses, you have a semicolon in the middle. You have a dependent clause first, independent clause after that, comma in the middle. If you have an independent clause first, a dependent clause after that, you have to see whether the dependent clause is a modifier, then you will use a comma, otherwise, no comma, right? Okay. Now we come to the most important. Okay. So this example is quite simple. Two different sentences combined together using semicolon. Okay. Now coming to the commas. Now this we already know that when we have two independent clauses, we can use a comma with a fan voice conjunction. Yeah, to combine them. Now it can also be used to set up an introductory information. You have modifiers in the beginning of the sentence. That is an introductory information. After that, you had a comma. Now, if you have a modifier in the beginning of the sentence, there should be a comma and what else? We go back to revisable. What else? Modifier in the beginning of the sentence. Yes, anybody here? Ma'am, do you remember modifier in the beginning of the sentence? What is the rule?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, can you tell me? So if you have a modifier in the beginning of the sentence, you have a comma and the noun that the modifier is referring to should be near the comma, right? Otherwise, we get an error. Right? So that we should remember. Now, all these are connected. You have a comma, it doesn't mean that, okay, modifiers may comma, we don't have to bother about commas otherwise. So commas are used in different ways and serve different purposes, right? Okay. Now, two independent clauses, fan voice conjunction and comma. That is, by now, I think you know that very well. Introductory information, non-essential descriptive information in the middle of the sentence. So it can be, you can use 2 dashes or 2 commas, right? Okay. Now, like, yeah, so this is important to know. Like in SAT, whenever you spot a comma and it is a grammar question, see if the comma is used correctly or not, right? It should be grammatically correct. It's not like we use a comma for a pause. That is not grammatically correct. It may be used, say somebody is writing and there are lots of things, the style of writing is there or something. That's okay, but not in SAT, especially when you are doing WL, right? It could be used in the reading section, you can come across. But when you come across a comma in WL and that part is underlined, there's a comma in the middle, you have to see whether that comma is correctly used or not. Yeah. Okay. Now we said this used between independent clauses, between dependent clause and independent clause. Yeah, when you have the dependent clause first. Now, when you have prepositional phrases or descriptive phrases, then also when you have that in the beginning of the sentence, you can use it. Or you have a transition in the beginning of the sentence. However, comma, right? Or even after a semicolon, you have however. Then also a comma will come, right? Now, around non-essential words or phrases that you know by now, say, like this one. Betsy, comma, a lovely woman offered to knit us socks. So Betsy offered to knit us socks. That's your main sentence.
Yes.
A lovely woman, additional information, 2 commas. Or 2 dashes can also come, but not 1 comma 1 dash. Yeah. So now, still, if we have this next one, London is a very old city, full stop. Now, it does, however. Now, however is in the middle, so you separate it with the commas, right? Yes, Pari, you missed something. I think you were out for something.
No, ma'am, I rejoined them.
Yeah, I think, how long were you out? So now when we're talking about modifiers, we just said that, yeah. If it is in the beginning, comma. If it is in the middle, 2 commas. If it is at the end, comma, then the modifier. Extra information at the end of the sentence, comma before that. Extra information in the beginning of the sentence, comma after that. Extra information in the middle of the sentence, comma both sides. Right? So whenever you have some in a sentence extra information coming up, you need a comma before, after, depending upon whether it is in after the sentence or before the sentence or in the middle of the sentence. Right? Now, separating a list, you use commas generally, unless you have a comma in the middle of an item. So that will be there. Now, another thing, say if you have this one, okay, what do you use in the last item? Comma and. Comma will always come before the and. And these you have learned since the primary section, so I think we need not repeat too much. Okay, now suppose I talk about this last sentence. Hiking, skiing, and whitewater rafting have always been some of my favorite activities. Right? Let me see over here. Hiking, skiing, and whitewater rafting. We don't use a comma after whitewater rafting because the sentence is being continued on. Yeah. So when you have a sentence continued after the list, you don't use a comma after the last item. That you have to remember. So they may give you a comma over here, but you should know that particular comma is not required. Okay. Okay, now. Okay, now when you have adjectives which can be reversed. So adjectives describing something. Say this one, my nephew made me a funny, cute car. So funny, cute are 2 adjectives. You can say cute, funny. So you can use a comma, sorry, between two adjectives which can be used in a reverse modules. Now, when you have transition words in the beginning of the sentence, usually or always, I would say, you will use a comma after that, right? Say, however, the judge disappeared. So, however, comma. Now, when you are using quotes or a conversation, she said, comma, then in quotes, like he asked, comma, why. Now, another thing that you will notice when you're using inverted commas, and you have a punctuation at the end of it. Say why, question mark. That punctuation will always come within the inverted comma. So if in a question you have, say, the comma after the inverted commas, look for an option which has it inside, right? So whenever you have a punctuation in inverted commas, it should be within the inverted comma, right? So if you see here, because it just makes sense, comma, inverted commas closed, she replied. Yeah, there'll be a comma before she replied, but that comma will be inside the inverted commas. Okay, so little things which we usually miss out on, right? So if you're reading the sentence and this comma is outside, you will say, she replied, there's a comma before it. Fine. But that's wrong. The comma should be inside the inverted commas. So any punctuation any punctuation which ends a sentence which is quoted, you have to remember that it should be inside. Okay, now another thing very important, when you have such as in a sentence, where do you use the comma? After sentence. After such as?
Which we use after which.
You will use comma before such as, not after. Right? Say you said the as follows, comma as follows. Yeah. Or as follows, maybe you can use semicolon or sorry, colons. Now, whenever you have such as, the comma will come before. Very important. Mark it in your book as very important, underline it. So when you are revising, you will know that this was important and we should not forget. So whenever you have something like such as coming up, you see where is the comma placed, before or after. If it is after, incorrect. It should be before. Let's look at these two sentences. Teachers give out a variety of homework assignments. Now they have comma such as comma, worksheets, hands-on projects, and online quizzes. So you have two commas here. We don't need two commas. We need a comma before such as, no comma. But there's a list such as this. Such as 1, 2, 3, 4 things, worksheets, hands-on projects, comma, and online quizzes. So whenever you come across such as, comma is before. Yeah, get it into your memory, never forget. Okay. Okay. Now we come to some more places where commas should not be used. First and foremost, between two independent clauses without a conjunction, right? Commas should not be used. Say, London is a very old city. It has some extremely modern parts. Two independent clauses, only comma means it's a comma space. So that's an error. And this error will come, you will come across a lot of times in a city. So you have to, so whenever you see a comma in an underlined part, or maybe you are given a question which is sentence combination. Two sentences are given to you. Your options, 4 options are combining the sentences in different ways. First, look at all the commas which are irrelevant, eliminate all those options. Yeah. Then you come to one particular option where the commas are correctly placed. The sentences are combined together properly, conjunctions are there, that will be a correct answer. So now in this case, we can use a comma conjunction or a semicolon, both would be correct, right? Okay. So comma plus an and, but, or any other fanverse conjunction is equivalent to a period. That's a full stop. Or a semicolon is also equivalent to a same. Now, when you have okay, read the sentence. London is a very old city, comma, but has many modern buildings. So the sentence given to you doesn't have a subject in the second part, right? So if you look at the second part, is it an independent clause? No. Yeah. So the subject is not repeated, but now if we had something like this, London is a very old city, but it has many modern buildings, it would be correct. So it has many modern buildings is an independent clause. But here, when the subject is not repeated, then you will not use a comma, right? So what does it become? Actually, it is becoming a dependent clause. The second clause is a dependent clause. So independent clause first, second part is a dependent clause, but not a modifier. No comma, right? So this is what you have to be able to identify and get the correct. Okay. Okay. Similarly, here, London is a very old city, has many modern buildings. So in this case, what will you do? London is a very old city, which has many modern buildings. No comma. Yeah, if you're going to combine it together. Now, something very important. When you have that in a sentence, do you use a comma? You should not use it. So whenever you come across that, you have to look at the commas around it, remove the commas, right? If you have that, say, London is a city that has many old buildings and monuments, no comma required. So whenever you have that, no comma before or after, right? This is a golden rule you have to remember. The SAT is very fond of these, such as that, these questions. Now, in some cases, suppose you look at this one. The snow used to build an igloo must have enough strength to be cut and stacked correctly. So, snow used to build an igloo. It implies the snow which is or that is used to build an igloo. So there also we don't need any comma, right? So wherever that is implied, we will not use comma. Okay. Okay. Another place where you don't use a comma is when you have a parenthesis in the middle of the sentence. No comma before the parenthesis. You can have a comma after, but not before. So if you have a comma before the parenthesis, it's as good as saying that we separated the additional information with 2 punctuations, right? Instead, if you have something like this, say if you read this, the Caribbean Sea contains some of the world's most stunning coral reefs, which are home to thousands of species of marine life, comma, but many of them are in danger because of overfishing and population. Now, if we remove the portions within the parenthesis, there's an extra information. Now, the comma but is correct. That's why you will check. Comma, conjunction. Two independent clauses. Now, suppose you don't have a comma over here. That means it is incorrect. Then you will look for your options where either you have a comma over here and followed by but, or something which may have removed the but and have a semicolon. That will also be correct. But you will not have a comma on both sides of the parentheses, right? So these are the rules that we should never forget. So commas plus, we have done this a lot of times. Two independent clauses which work as complete sentences, no commas. So this is just for revision. Lots of some examples which you can go through. Yeah. Now items in a series we already came across. So you have commas to separate items in a series and semicolons if any one of the items has a comma in the middle, right? Or semicolon can also be used instead of a comma. Sometimes you may have a sentence where they have used just semicolons, but that will be incorrect. So in this case, shaggy, purebred dogs, white cats, soft, cuddly gerbils, and fish. So you have commas in the middle of two of the items. We use semicolon. Now say this particular sentence. Tina got a car wash, semicolon, went to the pharmacy, comma, and bought a sled. So here, semicolon will be incorrect. It should be changed to a comma. Now here we came across the sentence, this one earlier also. Similar. Yeah, so Paris, comma, France, semicolon. Venice, comma, Italy, semicolon. And last time. Right?
Yes.
Following, Vinayak? All here? Okay, now when we, this also we did, get to the examples. When you have a list, which is not the end of the sentence. So, what was the rule? No comma after the last item, right? So this one. I bought apples, bananas, and pears. When I went to the market, should there be a comma there? No, right? There's no comma required over here. You also, I bought apples, bananas, and pears. Now, in this case, what will you do? Second sentence. I bought apples, bananas, and pears, comma, but I forgot to buy a pineapple. Is that correct? There's a list. There's a sentence. There's a part of a sentence after that. So you will be looking at, now there's a but in the middle, right? So the first part says, I bought apples, bananas, and pears. That in itself is independent clause. Yeah. But I forgot to buy a pineapple. Yes, feeling very sleepy? No? I thought so. Your eyes were looking down. So here you need a comma part. Yeah, I forgot to buy a pineapple can be written as a separate sentence. Okay. Okay, now let's look at something more. Okay, now here read this sentence. I swept the floor so that all the dust bunnies ran for cover. So everyone will read the sentence and identify the items. Write it down. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just mark the items in the list. And then we'll check whether you got them correct or not. Read the, after you have identified, read each item and see whether the comma separating the items is correct or not. So what do we have?
Spread the flow so that all of the dash values stand for top. And straight them out from underneath the formation.
Right,
Gather them all into a big pile.
yeah.
Decided I was too lazy to wrangle them into a trash can and brush them all into the.
Okay. So they are all separated with the help of comma. Are they correct? Yeah. There's no comma within any item, right? So you can have a long sentence like that, and maybe one of the punctuations can be correct or wrong, right? Maybe all of them. In this case, all of them are correct. So no error. If you had even one item with a comma in the middle, then you will separate all of them with the help of semi. Yeah, I think you are thorough with this. Now we come to apostrophes. Very important punctuation to confuse you. And the most confusing thing SAT comes up with is it's ITS, IT apostrophe S. Randomly they'll put them in. And if you and whenever you come across these things, earlier what did we say? That, such as, dashes. Yeah, whenever you see a dash or colon, and another item added is apostrophe, especially IT apostrophe S, ITS. Whenever you see that, see, is it used properly or not? So IT apostrophe S would be,
It is.
it is. ITS would be possessive. Similarly, there and THERE and THEIR.
There is possessive and there is a place.
And your, say, YOUR
Possessive.
and YOU apostrophe RE.
You are is possessive.
Your is possessive. Your with the apostrophe RE is
You are.
URE. So apostrophes are used for two things. When you have a proper noun, you want to make it into possessive, you use apostrophe. So apostrophe S. Now SAT can give you a plural with apostrophe S. So when you have a plural word which ends in S, apostrophe S will not be there, only apostrophe. Yeah. Say boys. Now boys is singular. Boy is singular. Boys apostrophe S. Now this is dress. Dress is singular. Ending with S, you need apostrophe S. Yeah. So whenever you have an apostrophe S, you have to be very careful. Figure out what the word is. Because what happens is, in SAT, you are in a hurry to complete your book. So you tend to overlook certain things. Now the big things you know that, okay, this I have to be very careful about. And these are the small things which usually we overlook. So it is very important to be careful so that you get full marks in this section. Because the reading section, getting full marks is a little bit, right? I think you know by now. But WL, you can. So you have to make up for all the lost marks with them. Okay. Now let's look at this one. Children, plural, apostrophes. Yeah. Now it's and it's we already discussed. You apostrophe RE, your, you are, and possessive. Now, THEY apostrophe RE, they are THEIR and THERE. They can give you any of these words in place of the other. So instead of THEIR, they can give you THERE. Instead of THEN, they can give you THAN. And if you are a little careless, you will have missed it out. Yeah. So in your options, when they are giving you options in sentence combinations or correcting a sentence, that is extremely important. Okay, now let's look at these. Yeah, I'll pick up a few examples over here. The whole lot of them are there. You can go through the others for practice. This is here again. Okay. This is a good one. The antique bookshop also sold other paper ephemera, such as comma, maps and newspapers, comma before sentence. Yeah. Now, if you look at this one, the market stalls sold ripe apples, comma, cherries, semicolon, and sometimes even apricots. Comma instead of semicolon. So identifying the errors, very important. Now, if you look at the next one, the class focused on programming languages, comma, such as Python, semicolon, algorithms, semicolon, and comma. And what was such as? Correct? Yeah. Okay, there's a dash in this one. That's my blanket dash, it's mine, not yours. Exclamation. Your blanket is over there. Now read the sentence carefully. You may be focusing on the dash, it's. Right? So when you see your dash and it's, your focus goes on the dash first. But remember, whenever you come across IPS, see if it is correctly used. Right? Okay, let's look at this one. The company's apostrophe S and the lobby's apostrophe argument was that corporations should be treated as people. Companies is plural, so apostrophe is not required. Right? Other than that, any error? There's, you have a that, check any punctuations, no punctuations, right? So here are some questions. Maybe we'll do a couple of them and then the rest you can do. So we have the first one. The whole sentence is underlined for you. So, C. Why do you think it's C? It's asking a question.
It is not asking.
It's not asking a question, right? Joe and Jenna were wondering if Sheila could bring a light snack, a fruit or cheese platter, comma, for example. That is correct? Okay. To the faculty meeting, question mark. Now you know the question mark should not be there. And now you come to the options. B is eliminated. So did you look at B?
No, I think it's not.
So instead of a hyphen, what have they used? They've used comma instead of hyphen. That is not wrong, but anything else is wrong? For example. So for example, the same rule as such as comes in. Yeah. Comma before for example, not after for example. So the comma after for example would be incorrect. Right? Such as, for example, same rules apply. Okay. Yes, Pari and Chinmay, is it clear? Did you get the answer? If you don't
Yes,
mind,
ma'am.
can you put videos on? Because
Ma'am, I am facing some issues. Your voice is also cracking for me.
okay. Buddy, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, where did mine go? So now let's get to the next one. So here's the second question.
See,
Why do you say C?
actually it's not asking a question and it is stating
Hmm.
answer like,
Second one.
yes,
Only one aspect of the mystery remained for her to unravel, the location of the missing prized Chihuahua. Yeah, so yes, question mark is not required. Other than that,
giving an answer of
hmm,
what was missed.
so if you look at D, there's a question mark eliminated. Yeah. Now between B and C, why did you choose C? There's a comma in B and there's a dash in C. Both are independent clauses in the building. One aspect of the mystery box remained for her to unravel. Yeah. Now between B and C, grammatically, the location of the missing prize Chihuahua, that is what additional information or something that is being emphasized. So a dash would be a better option, right? Now, otherwise, also if you look at this, the location of the missing prize Chihuahua can be used as a modifier and a comma before that, right? But it is not actually a modifier to see. It is like this is a part important to the sentence. Modifier would be something which is not absolutely important to the sentence, but this is important. So a dash to emphasize that this is important. So instead of a comma, they would use a dash emphasis, right? Always when you choose your answer, it should be logically correct. Ask yourself, why did I choose this? So between B and C, did you ask yourself why you chose C? You just looked at the question mark. So B also had no question mark, C had no question mark. So there should be a reason for choosing B over C, right? So now the rest of them you will do. That's your homework. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 questions. 12 questions. Yeah. So do you want a 5-minute break before we move on to the next session? Anyone wants to drink water, go to the washroom? Yeah. Whatever we did today is absolutely no problem, no confusion, we remember. How was your couple paper today?
not very well. Actually, I started early, so my speaking session went well.
Okay, there were no disturbance.
After 10 minutes, everyone started to speak. I had
So
completed till that.
So by that time, I think you had your thought process also ready for that. So what was the independent writing?
It was about that people often buy things when they see those things in other people's hand.
Okay, I think we have done that. So it's similar something.
Engagement.
So your reading and writing were full. What was your score for reading and writing? You would have got the score right for reading and
There
writing.
was no score. It like the test has ended and then there was no score.
The reading and writing score comes right there. You should have asked them. Yeah. So who of you are applying now on next one? When are you applying? You next week. All of you are applying next week.
This October.
You are applying.
October.
You are applying now. You started your application
Not first for university.
for university. You are in the 11th now. Yeah. So those in the 11th will be applying. So then now you want to start your writing.
Yes.
Yeah, you start writing.
I have prepared an essay. From Lingo ma'am is taking my
Yeah.
English part. So I've written an essay about a sport. The second topic of common accuracy.
Challenge.
Yes.
Failure.
Conservation, yes. And she has given back after editing.
So your activity list and everything is on page. Okay, so can we get back?
Yes.
Got a little rest in your pen?
Yes.
Is it getting boring? No? So grammar usually gets boring, right? Okay. So now second important thing is, now these you have been doing all through, but we still revise. Word choices like homophones, progressive contraction, these we did. Yeah, so these will come in different ways in different chapters, but you have to be thorough with them. So I won't go through these. Now the same thing applies to whose versus WHO essay. Yes, Chinmay and Pari, I hope you are there.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
One is- So you apostrophe RE versus your, that we did,
Yes.
yeah. Now whose and whose,
Which is used for the second.
who is
Whose.
and possessive is whose, WHOs. Yeah. Now similarly, the apostrophe RE and WERD, two completely different words. We are and were. Were is a verb. Yeah. Past tense. Where versus where. Now, those sound the same, but when it comes to writing, you know they're completely different. Now, they can confuse you with some words like imminent, eminent. These are homophones. Yeah. Two words which may sound the same. Spelling is different unless you are in a hurry. But when it comes to usage, meanings are different. So what does imminent mean? Any idea? Something bad about to happen. Yes? Yeah, the imminent storm, the imminent, say, flood, when it's raining too heavily. Yeah, eminent, that is a common word. Yeah, somebody who is respected or well known, famous. Right? Now, affect and effect. This is a very common question that you can. SAT is very fond of this. So whenever you come across these, the usage is very important. Now, affect and effect, they mean the same. Usage is different. What is the difference? Anybody?
Affect is harmony.
What are the harmonies? Affect is a yeah. Affect is the verb. Effect is the noun. So whenever you come across effect, there should be an article before that you know it's a noun. Yeah. Affect, if you see, like if you are confused, which one is a noun, which one is a verb, just remember, affect with an A, action. That's the verb. So this has an effect on or effect on. effect on. Yeah. This affected me or affected me. Affected me. Yeah. So something which is having an action on you or something which is doing the work, that would be affect. And effect would be the noun form. So if you're using it in a sentence, say, if A affects B, B experiences the effect of A's action. Right? So now if you see, we are confused, one should be like, say they can give you the sentence as if A affects B, B experiences the effect of his action. So now you know it is the other way around, right? So effect will be the noun form. The will come before the noun. Article always comes before a noun. The, and, this has, and. Now you can use a vowel and effect, right? See this one. The tornado affected citizens within the 40 miles. The medicine will affect you. Yeah, it's having an action on you. So it's only if the effect of the tornado, now effect. Yeah, the effect. You will feel now here we use the medicine will affect you. Here you will feel the effect of the medication. Right? Tina's big win had an effect on her confidence. Now, if you change the sentence a little, Tina's big win affected her confidence. Yeah. So the way the sentence is written, the word will be either effect or effect depending on whether it's used as a verb or as a noun. Meaning is the same. Right? Both mean having an influence on. But the usage will be different. Yeah, this is very important. Mark it as very important. Now another one, implicit, explicit. What's the difference? What does implicit mean?
Implied, which is not
Implied,
directly.
which is not directly said. Yeah, something which is not mentioned but implies. You must have come across these words in your reading section. The question implies, the author implies. Yeah, or something which is implicit in the first passage, not in the second. Remember? Okay. Explicit will be the opposite, something that is directly stated or clearly stated. Yeah. So the usage accordingly will be different. Say we have this one. She implicitly said she likes white shoes by saying she likes all colors but tan. So she said she likes all colors but tan, which would mean that she liked white shoes also. Right? Say we have this one. The law was explicit in whose tax rates were to be based. As the law has stated explicitly, clearly. Right? He said explicitly, you will not attend that concert. He was very clear about saying that. Okay. Now another, or more than that. Illude, allude, allusion, illusion. Yeah. What does illude mean? Elude. You are avoiding, right? And allude means, any idea what allude means? You are referring to something. Say a historical event that has happened earlier, or a person's work or a speech, anything on that, right? So that will be allude. Now allusion, like a magician creates an illusion, right? Something that is not something that is not there, but you feel that is there. Something that is not clear, but you are made to believe it is there. Yeah, something of that sort. So illusion would be like, no, sorry, that is illusion. See, I also got this. Illusion is the same, it comes from allude. You allude to something, this is an allusion of. Yeah, referring to somebody's work or something in history. And illusion is a false perception, right? So some like magicians use illusion. So a visual trick that is untrue. So something that is untrue. So or maybe a thought, maybe a dream. He had a dream, but he had an illusion that he would become a president. So that's okay. Now we come to these words: BEAR and BR. Vasu means to bear, and both of them. So if you look at BEAR, yeah, anything else? Animal, yeah, anything else? So you see, she could hardly bear the thought, that is, she could hardly tolerate. Yeah. Now, the company considering hiring additional staff, but could not bear the cost. Could not? It was, say, it was a burden. Something that is a burden on you, that would be there. Now, BARE, apart from being an, what would BARE be? Yes? Barefoot. Yeah, something which is uncovered. That could be there. So if you look at the examples. It can be minimal, bare minimal we say. It is a bare minimal we can do to save our life. Yeah. Naked, uncovered, or without supplies. Say the godown was bare of any grain. Yeah. So it was devoid of. Now when you talk about the verb, open up, bare one's heart. Right? Bare one's feelings, or bare one's thoughts. That way we can use it. The cupboard was bare, devoid of everything, empty. That is also BARE, bare, right? So Daniel had no idea why she began to bare her heart. So reveal her feelings. Keep cost to the bare minimum. That is minimal. Yeah. So bare minimum both together would be least. Right? Now let's look at this one. Now the usage is important. Here they will give you the words and maybe it's used wrong. So that could be an error. So if you look at the first one, is there any error? Yes, Pari and Chinmay, are you following? Sorry, I'm sitting down.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So now the first example, after losing his hearing, Beethoven had to rely on his imagination to hear his, no, yeah, there. Okay, now here we have some other examples. Now here that the famous THEN and THAN concept. Then and that. If you are now, they usually put those words into long sentences. Where you are engrossed in reading the sentence and figuring out the meaning and finding the error, where the error lies only in that little word. Yeah. So here we have, after losing his hearing, Beethoven had to rely on his imagination to hear his music, rather THAM it should be, instead of THEM. Okay, now if you look at the next one. Despite hours of work, web administration team was unable to restore the SITE. Instead of SIT. SIGHT would refer to vision. Yeah. SITE would refer to location. Okay, now the next one. You have effect coming. Right? Yes, Chinmay? Is effect here correct or wrong? How is it coming?
Ma'am,
Is it a verb or a noun?
ma'am, it should be, I think, effect type.
Hmm?
The E.
Either sentence allowed.
The presidential candidate used rhetorical flourishes to great effect in his speech and received a standing ovation.
Hmm. So is it coming in as a noun or a verb? It should be a
Ma'am, as a noun.
noun, right?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
So great something would be noun. Great is the adjective describing the noun. So great effect. It had, now if you remove the great and if you paraphrase the sentence, it had an effect. If you paraphrase it, now if you are confused, paraphrase the sentence and see how it comes in. Right? Okay. Now we move on a little. So these words are very important. They will come in. You'll get at least one or two questions where affect, effect, then, than, bear, any one of those bears, or illusion, allude. These are the very common words that you may come across. And of course, these are also there, the side or anything similar. Okay, now we come to something more, idioms and expressions. Yeah. Now, idioms you have been using in language, literature also. What are idioms? They're phrases which are meant to say something else, right? They're used to describe a situation referring to something else, usually. But now here we will come across idioms which are like idiomatic. We will in SAT, apart from idioms as such, most important would be idiomatic expressions. So the correct idiomatic expressions, that they may give you a sentence whether certain expression is not used correctly. Yeah, or it is not framed correctly. Both types of questions can come. So when you're talking about say prepositional phrases or idioms, maybe, yeah. So what do you mean by prepositional phrases? Where you have a phrase which comes up with a certain preposition. Like I said, comes up, right? Comes with a preposition up. Yeah. So these combinations are very important. So they may give you a wrong combination. You should know what is the correct combination. So if you're
Excuse
looking
me,
at,
ma'am.
yes,
Ma'am, a prepositional phrase will start with a preposition.
yeah, which is a preposition attached to the word or a group of words with a preposition in it. So the preposition should be correct. Let's look at some examples here. Like this one. The first one, the translucent sculpture used light as a means to connecting viewers. So means of. So it's always means of. Yeah. So you should remember what comes with this. This phrase. So it's a phrase which is a fixed phrase. You can't have any other preposition coming with it. Right? Okay. In accordance with, not in accordance to. So you will not say in accordance to these findings, it will always be in accordance with. Now devoid, what comes up with devoid? Of. Right? It's not devoid of something. So it doesn't have that devoid of. So it is, say, devoid of sympathy, right? Not devoid as. Now, similar to. You want to say this is similar with that, this is similar to that, right? The unmindful. The wounded man staggered aimlessly, unmindful to traffic or off traffic. Yeah, simple, but yes, these are questions that you can come up with, and you have to be very careful of not getting it. Okay, worthy, this writing is worthy of, yeah, worthy of a professional context. So similarly, these were prepositional phrases where you had a word with a preposition. Similarly, you can have verbal phrases. So verbs with a preposition, right? Or verbs with a preposition phrase with a verb, say followed on and for or followed by. It's always followed by. Yeah. Follow up on something, that is different. You are following up on something that somebody else done. Say, I say that, have you done your homework? I follow up on your homework, right? Or maybe you have a doubt, you follow up on the teacher with your doubt. So responsible for, not responsible of, right? Yes, Pari and Chinmay, are you following?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Now, refrain. What comes with refrain? From, right? So in this sentence, one should refrain from texting while driving. So refrain is staying away. So staying away from, right? When you say staying away, then also you would use from. Okay, now both Bob insists at being annoying on you, right? So this is just going back and brushing up on these. You'll be knowing all of them anyway. Now let's look at this sentence. The use of the improper idiom might be acceptable with one's peers, though the SAT is hardly one's peer. It will be acceptable too, not acceptable with, right? The next one. Scientists believe the brain as the most complicated. Brain to be, not as. Yeah, you do come across written like this, brain as or something as, but it's to be, right? Now, the events depicted to be would be wrong, depicted as. So when you're talking about believe, then as, depicted to be, right? Prejudice, what comes with prejudice? Against. So you're not prejudiced towards, you're favorable towards. Yeah, or favor, there is a favorable for something, but prejudice is always against something. So against will come. Okay. So these are the types of prepositional phrases that you may come across. There are some questions over here. Okay, we'll do the first two. The rest you can do. Right? So first one is, my cat likes to bury its toy, my mouse, in the couch, as well as bat them under it. There is also its preferred gift to visitors.
They
Hmm?
they are.
They are. Okay, number two.
Ma'am, A.
Hmm? A,
A.
everything is correct in the answer.
Yes.
It says, as a result, after you apostrophe RE, you are done visiting my house, you might find your bag. That is also good. Okay, it's ITS, it's also good. Right? Okay, third one. You can finish up this paragraph.
B.
Hmm?
B.
B. Yeah. So what was the error you spotted? Your. Yeah, so we move on. Okay, now the rest of them 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You can do, right? Okay, we'll do the first, we'll do number 10, 10 and 11. So get to now question number 10. There's 2 sentences to read the whole underlined portion. Hmm? Read, be carefully. Read the whole thing.
B.
Go through all the words that could be wrong. As I said, the whole entire underlined portion, that is 2 sentences. Hmm? B. Okay, now read option B carefully. Underline the words that you are looking for. Underline the words you're looking for. All of them. Could be. What's the right? So if you're looking at B, the problem with B is now your underlined portion says the answer to the question on the literature exam was alluding her. Alluding will not be correct. It should be alluding. Yeah. It was about the rhetorical effects of certain lines. Is that correct? Hmm? It was about the rhetorical effect of. Yeah. So it's the action that is happening. Certain lines in which a character put an effect and began speaking in an epic poetic style. So an effect. So if you look at B, now get back to B, those who said B, and effect would be wrong, which would be an effect. So D has your answer, rhetorical effect and an effect, and you are looking for alluding. Right? So got it? Along one. Now number 11. So we can do, okay, we'll do this entire passage. Number 11. Is it correct?
Yes.
It's correct. It wasn't an illusion. It was really there, an allusion to Homer. So you're referring to Homer. Right? Okay, number 12. That's a little complicated. Yes, Pari, what is your answer? Number 12. Once you get it, let me know.
B,
Hmm?
B, 12.
No longer affect any changes. No, that's why I said this is a little complicated. Read carefully what does the word mean over here. So you remove the word affect or effect and figure out what should come. Paraphrase. The class was, it says, the class was done and she could no longer dash any changes in her grade, but she was happy with her work. So she could no longer bring about any changes. Yeah. So she could no longer get it changed. No longer. It will be, now here is the
I
sheet.
think it will be option D.
Huh? Yeah.
For 12th one, option D.
It's not like she is doing. She is getting it done. Somebody has to do it for her. So she wants a change. So an effect. Yeah. As I said, this is a little complicated. Paraphrase and figure out what should come. Yeah. Yes, but you are absolutely correct. Now coming to 13. That's quite easy.
Either B or C.
Either B or D. So
It is discontinued.
there are two words over here. You have elude and imminent, right? You have to see which one is correct, which one is wrong. So first you identify the error. Is elude correct? Elude is correct, right? It wouldn't elude the professor. And imminent is wrong. It should be imminent. So then what's your answer? B. B. Right? D will not be your answer because it is elude. You're not looking for elude. You're looking for elude. Okay? Now the rest of the questions you will do. Now there's so now there's a list of homophones and possessives. So all that we did, among and between. This is another little bit, you get confused. When to use among, when to use between. Among is used when you are talking about many things. Yeah, say lots of people. It was distributed among the poor. Yeah, conversation among the class or between the students. Between the students, that is specific. Conversation between two people is specific. Yeah. So when you're talking about a lot of, say a crowd, there is among. Between is among one or two people or things. You are choosing between this and that. Maybe you had 4 choices. You have to choose between them. You're not choosing among them. Right? So among is when it is broader. Between, narrow term. You can remember it. Yeah, that is usually we get confused when it comes to usage. Now, complement and complement.
Complement is to give
Which one? I or
I1.
I1. Compliment, you compliment somebody for something. Yeah, you praise somebody or flatter. and complement with an E, C-O-M-P-L-E, to complete, like complementary angles, right? To complete something. Now, either and neither. Either like one of them, neither is none of them. Right? They can come up with this. Illicit and illicit. This is one important part. Because usually we get confused. We don't read it properly. Illicit means you elicit the truth, draw out from, or elicit the conclusion. Yeah? Illicit, illegal. Yeah? Illicit labor, illicit drugs. Now, farther and further. What would that be?
Further, it's to, like, further he says that.
Father is a father.
Distance.
Father is what? As in distance. Yeah. Okay. Now use of I and me. When you come as an object, the main person, then you use I. Me, when you are the subject. Right? I explained this last time also. It's and it's now you know by heart. Then we come to something more. Lead and led. What means what? Lead means you are leading the path. You are the leader. Comes from leader. Led,
Already made.
past tense. Yeah. Led can also be the pencil led and otherwise past tense. Less, much, few, or many. This also I think we came across earlier. Yeah. So when it is countable and when it is uncountable, we came across this when we were doing singular plural. Yeah, the verbs that come. A lie, lay.
I should say the case.
Either it is lying there or you are lying to somebody, both ways. And lay, something is lying there, past tense. Okay. Lose and lose. This is something which is very confusing sometimes. So, LOSE loses. LOSE is lost. Yeah. Something is loose, not tight. Or it is, yeah, something is which is lying around, not kept properly, that is also loose. Or you can say loose change. Yeah. Release from attachment, that is loose. So if you get confused, what do? Think of lost. Lost has a single O. So lose will be past tense of or the present tense of lost, not lose. They will give these words usually in that sense that you have lost something. So you know where LOO comes in and where LO comes in. Right? Now then I told you to be very careful of that. Yeah. There, this we did. Now two and two double. They're very easy, very simple. They mean different things, but they may give you the word and you don't even realize that it is there. They may give you TO instead of TO. You read the entire sentence looking for an error, but not looking at that. It happens with everything, right? So you have to be careful when you come across these words. Now, who and which? Who and which? Yeah. So who we will talk about when it is a person. Which? When it is a thing, organization. Yeah. Which and that we have come across this earlier. So when do you use which? When do you use that?
Which is when there is an addition.
When it is specifically important. Yeah. Like we had that example, the tool which was used is lost, and to that I used for the project was lost. So that would refer to something important, which would refer to something that is not so important. Who we did. So who and who would be the possessive? Yeah. Who is when it is a subject of the sentence, a person. Whose, WHO apostrophe S, and whose we already did. Yeah, possessive and possessive, contraction and possessive. So you are also this video. Now, when we come to transition words, this is important. When were the transition words important? The relationship between two parts of the sentence or two sentences. There, they will give you a wrong transition, and you have to figure out which is the correct one, right? So, like, when do you use? So, any additional information, and for the moreover, not moreover.
Not for joining.
Right? Moreover is usually when there's a contrast. Yeah, this is said, but this is also, this is true. Moreover, this. So now, but like when not very strong, but is very strong contradiction. But moreover is there is slight contradiction, right? Because when there's a cause-effect relationship, reason, yet this happened. It was raining, yet we went to school. Yeah. So there's a, so yet is usually used like there is a contradiction, but like something is there, something follows. In spite of something happened. That would be yet. Or I told her not to do it, yet she did it. Yeah. So when you can replace it with in spite of, then it is correct. And now 4.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes. Yes, Iman.
So, ma'am, can I leave? I have a class at 6:30, so I need to leave for that.
So we are just winding up anyway. So you go through all these, and now session 10, you will do some of it, and then you can do later. Okay, all the exercises that were there, you will do, and the list of idioms that is for you for your self-study. And find out more idioms, write them down, look up the meanings and how they are used. Right? So when you come up with idioms, you should not be wrong. Okay? So whatever we did today, it was very important. Revise, go through it so that you don't forget. Okay? Okay then. So we'll see you next Saturday. So I hope all of you will be in class. Yes, Chinmay and Pari, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye, ma'am.
Okay, so next week you'll be all in class. I don't know. So today I was very like last time only 2 of you were there, and you were not. You said you were not going to be.
Yes, but like someone over there.
Yeah. So I was wondering that would I be in class with only one person? Good order. Okay then. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And remember to revise and do the exercises. Any doubts? Write them down.